Time to talk about Ken Paxton. You guys know who Ken Paxton is? He is the Attorney General in Texas. He is extremely conservative and is also a giant asshole. And he's being impeached, which maybe I think that's a sign that there is a God. Maybe there actually is one. If this piece of shit is finally getting what's coming to him. So, what's the story with this guy, right? The House of Representatives in Texas, the Texas House, has voted 121 to 23 to impeach Ken Paxton. According to Texas law, since he is impeached, that means he is removed from office immediately while we're waiting to have a trial in the Senate. So it's basically the same way that it works in Congress, right? In the National Congress. Except here, when he gets impeached, they remove him from office immediately, which maybe we should do the same thing on a national level. That would be nice, wouldn't it? So his charges are bribery, abuse of office, and obstruction of justice. What is significant about this is that Ken Paxton is, of course, a Republican, but not just any Republican. He's sort of like a Republican superstar who I think has plans on greater public office, if not the governorship. I think he might even be eyeing the presidency one day because he's made a career out of being basically a culture warrior. For years, Ken Paxton has used the power of his office to advance his own, basically his own little front in the culture war. Back in 2016, Ken Paxton sued to overturn the ACA. He was part of a coalition that sued to have the entire thing declared unconstitutional back in 2016. Now, that's what I always get about religious conservatives. You know, they always care so much about, God and all that, and Jesus and the Bible, but their actions are like the exact opposite of what their faith says. It's like this guy sued to remove health care from, at that time, 30 million people. Like if they would have overturned it, because this was back in 2016, and at that now it's more. Now it's like upwards of 80, if not even 100 million people. But at that time, around 35 million people were getting their health care directly from those state exchanges, and he wanted to overturn all of that, right? Wanted to get rid of all that stuff. No more state exchanges, no more regulations. Health insurance companies could go back to just kicking you off the minute you actually got sick. And think about that, it's like a company that you pay for years and years and years to pay your health insurance, and then the minute you go to use it, suddenly your health insurance refuses to actually do what you've been paying them to do. I mean, it's like if I had a security company and I put a little sign in my front yard, protected by Dave's security company or something like that. And then some guys break in my house, and I call my security guards, and they just be like, "Yeah, we're not going to come. Sorry." And you'd be like, "What the fuck? I pay you guys. Show up." And they go, "Nope, sorry. In fact, you know what? You're no longer our customer. Sorry. Oh yeah, we're not giving you your money back either. You're not getting a refund." Like, imagine that. Imagine if that's what happened. It'd be sort of like, or imagine like, let's say you went to a Subway and you order a Subway sandwich, right? And the guy puts a Subway sandwich together for you and all that. And then you go up to the register and you pay him, and then he goes, "Yeah, I'm not giving you the sandwich." You go, "Well, what are you talking about? I just paid you for it." It's like, "Yeah, too bad. You're not getting the sandwich. Sorry. Time for you to leave." It's like, what the fuck, man? Like, that, is there any other business out there that is allowed to do that? How come health insurance could do it? How come health insurance could just randomly fucking cancel you the minute that you need the insurance? It's like, and they just go, "Yeah, we're not paying. Sorry." And there's nothing you can fucking do about it, right? That's what it was like. Ken Paxton wanted to bring that shit back. Because of what? Because Jesus said so? I mean, I fail to see where in the Bible Jesus says it's okay for a company to do that, right? But that's what he wanted. Also in 2016, Ken Paxton led a coalition of 26 states to sue to overturn the DREAM Act, the deferred action for something something. I can't remember what it stands for. Which what it is it's deferred action against people who came over illegally when they were small children. Like, say, for example, if your parents brought you over when you were like an infant to the United States over the border illegally, and you've basically spent your entire life in the United States, but you're technically not a citizen. That's what the DREAM Act was. It was to allow those people who have roots here and nowhere else, like a way to stay in the country until they can gain citizenship. He wanted to reverse that. Mighty fucking Christian of you. 2017, in Texas, he defended a lawsuit defending the Republican Party's use of gerrymandering. So basically saying, yeah, it's A-okay that if we draw these district lines so that it, say, for example, puts all of the Democrats into one district and then splits up like the remaining 9 districts among Republicans. So then that way, you know, Texas is sending, like, even though there's like just as many Democrats in Texas as there are Republicans, all of the fucking House seats go to the Republicans. That's the real world effect of gerrymandering, by the way. So if you ever wonder like why everybody is such fucking has a hard on against gerrymandering, that's exactly what it is. It's drawing the maps in such a way as to one political party gets all the seats, right? And it's the reason why we have a Republican majority in the House right now. That's the reason why, because of gerrymandering. Because if the districts were actually drawn in a fair way, then there would be a Democratic majority right now, because there are more Democrats in the country than there are Republicans. There are more people in the last 2 elections voted for Democrats than Republicans voted for Republicans. Yet somehow Republicans managed to actually own the majority of state houses, the majority of governorships, the majority of House seats, the majority of, I mean, how does the political party that has the least amount of people, the least amount of votes, have all the goddamn power? How did they pull this off? Well, one method they did is through gerrymandering. It's incredibly undemocratic. It's basically legalized cheating. And Ken Paxton sued to defend that, which Texas won, by the way. He won that suit. Basically said, Texas, yep, you're allowed to gerrymander all you want. So if you live in Texas and you're a Democrat, right, and you're wondering why millions and millions and millions of people are voting Democrat, yet Texas remains red, that's why. Like, Ken Paxton, like, really hates democracy, really hates people actually being able to vote. He recently bragged, just yesterday I think, he bragged about how he stopped mail-in ballots in Texas, and if he didn't do that, then Donald Trump would have lost Texas, right? Think about that. Think about, you know, if that was, I mean, I personally think that's bullshit. I think he's just sort of virtue signaling there. But if that was true, that means that Donald Trump wouldn't have won a Republican stronghold like Texas without cheating, without voter suppression. Voter suppression is the only reason why he won that state. If Ken Paxton is, if what he's saying is accurate, which I don't think it is, I think Ken Paxton right there is just bullshitting in order to, like, you know, tell the Republican Party, it's like, hey, you need me, assholes. Why are you impeaching me? See, because that's the thing. The majority of the people who impeached him were Republicans, and this is like a rare instance of the Republican Party actually holding one of their own to account. Because Republicans never do that. Republicans never, ever, ever hold one of their own people accountable, especially in Texas. So this is why it's such a big deal. This is why it's such a rare thing. It's like, wow, the evidence for his crimes must be super fucking hardcore if the Republican Party in Texas, if the GOP in Texas, which is the largest, like, most well-funded state GOP there is, like, if they're willing to actually, like, impeach this guy, it must be a slam dunk case. Some other things about Ken Paxton. 2020, during the height of the pandemic, he threatened local Texas governments with lawsuits unless they rescinded stay-at-home orders and rules about face masks. So does everything he could in order to spread COVID-19 in Texas, Mighty fucking Christian of you there, you know? Here's the thing, it's like, this was during a time before there were vaccines. So the only way to actually stop the spread of this disease was to wear masks and to stay home, right? And he did everything he legally could to stop that from happening. It's like they wanted people to die, almost, right? So and that's something that we should never forget. We should never ever ever forget ever how badly the Republicans treated treated us during the pandemic. How they just didn't give a flying fuck about anybody. Like, cause why does he want to do that? Why does he not want people to stay home and wear face masks? Well, the face mask thing is just 100% virtue signaling, because face masks work. We've known face masks work for literally 100 years in order to stop the spread of disease. I mean, that's the reason why when you go and get surgery, the doctor wears a fucking face mask, right? So that he doesn't accidentally sneeze and infect your, body cavity with his fucking, mucus and germs and shit. So that's just straight up fucking, that's just a straight up dog whistle, virtue signal to his party there. But why did he want people, why did he specifically sue these local governments to stop shelter in place, right? To stop stay-at-home orders? Because that meant that businesses had to close because it hurt the economy. And so they value, and that's the thing we saw all around the country. He wasn't the only one. In red states, all over the place, Florida, Florida and fucking Texas and Kentucky and all these other places had these reactions, right, against COVID-19 measures, because because Republicans value money more than they value human lives. And if you needed any more proof, there's the proof. It's not just hyperbole when we say that. When we say all they care about is money, they literally only care about money. And they don't give a shit if you have to die, as long as you get up off your ass and go to that job. Right now we're seeing it with, there's a big push for companies to have people come back to the office. Hell, my job did it too. I mean, yeah, it's well, now we have vaccines and stuff, so it's not as bad. But COVID is not over. There's still people, roughly, I think, last week, 250 people died last week just of COVID-19 in this country. It's still not over. It's still definitely a thing. You still need to, if you still need to get those vaccines, right? And, I mean, I think the face mask thing is over with, but sometimes I still wear it. Sometimes if I'm gonna be indoors for a long time, for example, yeah, maybe I'll wear a face mask. It's nothing to fight, But that's the thing, is he purposely sued during a time when there weren't vaccines in order to stop that, right? Because they care more about money. They don't give a fuck about you. It's absolutely despicable. That in and of itself there is just absolute proof to me that the conservatives and the Jesus freaks and shit are the biggest fucking hypocrites of all time. Let's see. 2017 filed a lawsuit to challenge the constitutionality of sanctuary cities. Well, thanks a lot, asshole. He sued to overturn the 2020 election results in 4 states. So there you go, election denier as well. We already mentioned how he partook in voter suppression. He stopped mail-in ballots in Texas, that kind of thing, right? Was just bragging about that shit. He's recently targeted hospitals which provide gender-affirming care to minors. This past February 2022, Paxton issued a new interpretation of Texas law in a written opinion that characterized gender-affirming care for transgendered youth as child abuse. So, yep, he's full on board with the anti-trans panic. 2022, in June, he said he would defend the state laws against sodomy or same-sex sexual relations if the Supreme Court were to overturn the case which protects sodomy. So that case is Lawrence v. Texas, which I know is next on the chopping block. The religious conservatives and the Republicans and Jesus freaks and shit, they got rid of abortion already. That was their big huge target for decades and decades. So now they got to find another target. So what are they looking at? They're looking at things like interracial marriage, they're looking at gay marriage, and they're looking at sodomy laws, and that's the law basically. Lawrence v. Texas. That's the law that's the case that basically legalized sodomy. Well, what's sodomy? Sodomy is basically sexual relations between two adults of the same sex, but it can also be defined as any sort of sex between two adults that doesn't result in procreation. So, oral sex, even between people of opposite genders, anal sex, right? I mean, if you're wondering why this has been their agenda for a long time, has been to push back on these things. It has been to undo the gains made during the sexual revolution in the 60s and 70s. There was a time when these things were illegal, and you could go to. I mean, imagine that, right? Something like oral sex, for example, is so commonplace nowadays that it's like no one even thinks twice about it. Right? Imagine suddenly it's illegal. Now, first off, how are they going to enforce that? Well, it doesn't matter. Right, that's the thing. It's like you'll sit there and you'll be like, there's no way that they could possibly enforce what I do in my own home, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's not the point. The point isn't to basically raid people's houses and, make sure that they're not engaging in the sodomy there. The point is that these laws would be enforced selectively against basically their political enemies. That's how they would do it, because that's what, spoilers, folks, that's what fascism is all about. In this case, it would be religious sort of, totalitarianism. And if you think this can't happen, it can. A good example is Iran. Iran was mostly a secular country until the student revolution turned it into a fundamentalist hellhole. It can happen. Afghanistan, before the Soviet invasion, was a secular country. It wasn't run by religious fanatics. And yeah, okay, I mean, they took, that's a little bit of a different story. That wasn't the result of a culture war. It was a result of an actual war. But look at Afghanistan now. Look at Iran now. Societies regress all the time. It's not a steady march towards the future. No. The wrong person gets in charge, and I mean we're witnessing it right now with abortion basically being outlawed in half the country. We're seeing how a society can regress in real time. And if you want to stop this, folks, these are the kinds of people that you need to pay attention to. Ken Paxton is one of those people that's making that happen. He's one of the people out there who is actually passing the laws which are regressing society. This motherfucker deserves it, right? And that's the thing. Like I said before, he must have really screwed up hard. He must really have serious evidence out there against him if the Republican Party in Texas is willing to actually hold him accountable. So let's take a look at what Ken Paxton is actually being charged with. Okay, so I got a list here. This is actually from Wikipedia. They got a nice big list of all of the crap that he's actually being charged with. We're going to read through these. There's about 20 of them. A lot of them have to do with this guy named Nate Paul, who was sort of like Ken Paxton's top donor. Kind of the same way that Clarence Thomas has sort of a rich patron that takes him on trips all the time. Remember the stream we did a few weeks back about Clarence Thomas's rich benefactor and all the weird shit that he's into. The guy's like collecting Nazi memorabilia, that kind of thing. Ken Paxton has sort of a similar guy named Nate Paul, who is kind of like his sort of rich benefactor that donates all this money to him and gives him personal gifts and stuff like that, right? So, first charge, Paxton ignored his official duty to protect charities when he directed his office to interfere in the Mitt Foundation charity's lawsuit against Nate Paul, a political donor to Paxton. Number 2, Paxton abused his official power to issue written legal opinions when he directed his office to write an opinion to prevent Paul's properties from being sold in foreclosure, and also had his office reverse their legal conclusions in an attempt to benefit Paul. To cover up his direction, Paxton arranged for a Senate committee chairperson to seek the above opinion. So he wrote an opinion and then got, in order to benefit his rich benefactor, and then got this Senate committee chairperson to basically say this was my opinion. So yeah, that's kind of corrupt. You know, why don't we just go ahead and put this on screen since I'm reading it. Okay, so this is, let's just put, there we go. This is just straight up from the Wikipedia entry on Ken Paxton. So let's scroll down here. And there we go. So we're on number 3 here. This will also give my hand a break from drawing. Paxton abused his official power by directing his office to violate the law regarding 2 public information requests, one of which concerned Department of Public Safety records for a criminal investigation of Paul. Stepping in again to defend this guy, Nate Paul. Paxton abused his official power to improperly obtain private information in an attempt to release it for Paul's benefit. Number 5, Paxton abused his official power by hiring a special prosecutor, Brandon Kamek, to investigate a baseless complaint made by Paul. Kamek would issue over 30 grand jury subpoenas to benefit Paul. Kind of seems like Paxton is bending the rules kind of a lot to help the guy who's buttering his bread there, right? Number 6, Paxton ignored his official duty by improperly firing whistleblowers in his office who had, in good faith, alleged to authorities that Paxton had broken the law. Paxton also privately and publicly tried to tarnish the whistleblowers' reputations and harm their chances of future employment. Apparently there was around 7 whistleblowers that he fired, which is like, just one of them is bad enough, but fucking 7 people? Kind of a lot. Paxton wrongly used public resources by having his office conduct a sham investigation into the whistleblowers' allegations, and having his office create a report containing false or misleading statements in Paxton's defense. Number 8, Paxton abused his official power in his attempt to settle the whistleblowers' lawsuit, which delayed the discovery of facts and testimony at trial to Paxton's advantage, preventing voters from gaining knowledge regarding Paxton. So basically, he settled, right? He tried to settle with these lawsuits, which basically meant that all of the dirt didn't come out about him before the election came. Right, kind of skeezy there. Number 9, Paxton accepted a bribe by Paul's employment of a woman with whom Paxton was having an extramarital affair, and in return, Paxton used his office to help Paul. So basically, Paxton got his side chick a job with Nate Paul, and then he used his office to help him in a quid pro quo. Like, you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of thing. It's like, okay. Cheating on his wife too, I guess. Well, what do you fucking expect, right? Guy's a conservative Christian Republican. Number 10, Paxton accepted a bribe by having Paul, a real estate developer, renovate Paxton's home, and return Paxton to use his office to help Paul. Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? That's the same thing that Clarence Thomas got from his rich benefactor too. You know, the guy bought his mother's house, renovated it, and then let his mother live there for free. Right? Straight up fucking corruption 101 there. You know, that's what's called an illegal gift. You're not allowed to do that when you're a government employee. You're not allowed to accept excessive gifts like that. Right? And when they say you're not allowed to accept gifts, they mean excessive gifts. So it's like somebody buys you lunch one day. That's not an excessive gift, right? But somebody buys a house and lets you or a family member live there for free. That's an excessive gift. Not supposed to be able to do that. That means that's a bribe. Moving on. Paxton obstructed justice by delaying his trial for federal securities fraud after being indicted in 2015, preventing voters from getting knowledge regarding Paxton. That's another thing. Yeah, so he was indicted way back, like it says in 2015, right? That's fucking 8 years, and he still hasn't gone to trial yet. And apparently, he's been doing all kinds of legal maneuvers behind the scenes, using his power as the attorney general in order to delay that trial. Which means that basically, when there's no trial, then there's no discovery. So that way, the voters don't know. Right? So he can get reelected and shit. You're not supposed to use the power of your office to personally benefit yourself. That's the very definition of corruption there, right? Number 12, Paxton obstructed justice by benefiting from a lawsuit filed by his political donor, Jeff Blackard, that caused problems in paying the prosecutors working on Paxton's securities fraud case, delaying the trial and discovery of evidence, preventing voters from getting knowledge regarding Paxton. Seems to be a pattern with this guy. Paxton made false statements to the State Securities Board regarding his illegal failure to register with them. 14. Paxton did not accurately reveal his financial interests to the Texas Ethics Commission, violating law. 15. Paxton made or directed for multiple false or misleading statements to be published in his office report responding to the whistleblower allegations. 16. Paxton conspired or tried to conspire with other people for the actions detailed in the articles of impeachment. 17. Paxton abused his official power by having his office act to benefit him or other people. Yeah, that's what all of these sound like. 18. Paxton ignored his duty and violated the Texas Constitution, his oaths of office, statutes, and public policy for the actions detailed in the articles of impeachment. 19. Paxton was unfit for holding office for the actions detailed in the articles of impeachment. 20. Paxton abused or neglected his official power to prevent lawful governance and obstruct justice, bringing his office into scandal and disrepute for the actions detailed in the articles of impeachment. So these are the things that he has been impeached for. And so what happens now? Yeah, now it goes to, let's go ahead and turn this off. It goes to the Texas Senate, and then he'll get a trial. And here's the thing to remember, folks, right? Even though this happens, even if he gets convicted, that means that he is just no longer the he gets to no longer be the attorney general in Texas, right? It would then be up to whatever law enforcement agency is out there to decide to open a criminal case regarding some of these. Now, some of these, it actually looks like there already is a criminal case, like, for example, the securities fraud or whatever. But then he wouldn't be able to use his power of his office in order to delay the trial anymore. So, yeah, sounds pretty fucking bad. And, it really gets me because this guy is a conservative culture warrior. Like, we just went through his rap sheet there and all of the lawsuits. He kind of made a career of himself, like, with all of the different sort of, lawsuits against Democrats for anti-woke causes and stuff like that. And it kind of goes to show, once again, it's like the people out there who are screaming the loudest are the most dirty. Christian conservatives are the skeeziest fucking people. Like, especially when it comes to Christian conservative politicians. Like, they literally don't think that the rules apply to them. They literally don't. And it always kind of got me how conservative Christians are able to square that circle. How they're able to think in their head, it's like, oh, well, I'm a God-fearing, whatever, and I respect Jesus and the Bible and shit like that. But at the same time, I'm going to break all these fucking laws, right? And how is it that they think the law just doesn't apply to them? And I really think it really comes down to just a sense of superiority they get because they think God will forgive them. I really think that's what it is. I really think they go, well, I'm a good person, and I'm doing all this shit that God wants, so it's fine if I bend a law here or there, because it's for a greater cause. I really think that has a lot to do with it, because he's not the only one. We see this same pattern over and over and over with all of basically every single religious conservative politician there is. They constantly break the fucking law. They constantly skirt the law. They constantly just don't they don't think the law applies to them. I think I really think that has a lot to do with it. I really think they think that that they're working for a higher cause, and that it's fine because if they, Jesus will forgive them and shit because they're working to, like, protect the baby fetuses or whatever. I really think that has a lot to do with it. And so this is great. This sends a message to these assholes. It's like, no. Like, your religion doesn't give you special privileges. You got to remember these, Ken Paxton is part of the Christian nationalist crowd. He's one of those people that thinks that the Constitution only applies to Christians. That only Christians get First Amendment protections. That only Christians get, should have the ability to vote, and they're the only ones that should have free speech and freedom of religion, and that other people who are of different religions should not have freedom of religion. So if you're not Christian, if you're a Muslim or something like that, or even if you're a Mormon, if you're like a different kind of Christian than they are, then you don't have rights, that you have to be subjected to their basically religious indoctrination, right? That's what they want. That's the end game, I think. When like all of this anti-trans stuff, you notice how they always focus in on schools and everything, and it's like that's where they we want to take the books out of the schools with all the trans and the gay people in them, right? We want to change all these laws so that kids that we take all the gender stuff out of schools, like in Texas, not in Texas, in Florida, the don't say gay thing in Florida schools. Like, why are they always focusing on schools like that? It's because I think the end game, the final goal is to basically bring back religious indoctrination in schools. That's what I think. I think they want to take it over so that they can do things like teach creationism again, get rid of sex ed completely, teach their version of Christianity, like, have things like prayer meetings and stuff endorsed by the school. All the stuff that's been, like, outlawed over the last century. They want to bring all that shit back so that when your kid goes to public school, they get indoctrinated into whatever brand of Christianity these people want. And if you don't like it, because right now, how they're the ones that have to homeschool their kids. They're the ones that have to, like, put their kids in private schools and shit like that. And they want to get rid of that. They want public money to go towards evangelizing other people's children. That's what they want. That's what I think they want. That's what I think the end game is. So anyway, good. So long story short, fuck Ken Paxton. Fuck him. I'm glad that he's, like, losing his job. And I hope that after they vote to kick his ass out of the Attorney General's seat, where he never should have been in the fucking first place, I hope they open a criminal investigation into his ass and throw his ass into fucking jail. It'll be a good lesson to the rest. The guy never should have been in that position. And he's a good example of what happens when conservative Christian evangelical culture warriors gain too much fucking power, right? Because it wasn't just Texas that he was turning into a right-wing hellhole. He led lawsuits all around the country at a national level to overturn policy enacted by the federal government in order to make other people's life worse, to enforce his agenda on everybody else. The AG of one state pushing his views across the entire country, most of the time unsuccessfully, but still. That shouldn't be allowed. This is why it matters, man. Vote in every fucking election. Even for people like, the Attorney General of your state. Can you name the Attorney General of your state? I can't. I have no idea who the Attorney General of California is, right? That's why it's important to, like, we should know. Right? I think I'm going to go look them up after this and find out who they are and what they stand for. And the next time an election comes around and they're up, then I know who to vote for. Because that's why this shit is important. I mean, I'm not trying to say I'm, like, super perfect and I know everything there is to know about politics in my state either. I don't. That's bad. Right? We should know these things. This is why it's important. People like Ken Paxton abusing their fucking power is why it's important for us to be it's why we owe it to our country and we owe it to ourselves to be politically informed and to be politically active. Anyway, fuck this asshole. I'm glad he got impeached. Hello folks, if you like what I do and you want to support the channel, please consider buying something from my Etsy shop, supporting me on Patreon, liking and subscribing, and checking me out across my social media links listed below. Thank you all so much, and see you next time.